Hello, this is Meg Strake. I just want to talk about this app here. It's a Glide app that I'm trying to do something to allow people to make reservations for a barber shop. So I'm thinking maybe two or three barbers in a place, and people can actually book their preference of whichever barber they want. But if they're specified by time, or they're linked by a time that they can actually come, they can then choose a different barber to be able to make that happen. The idea is that they can actually just see what times are available. They can actually make the booking. They can tell them what they actually want and send that through. Maybe another thing would be to actually allow for them to actually pay beforehand as well. But most people are actually just paying on the day type thing. So that may not be necessary. Now, there might be a couple of ways of filtering this. One by people who use the app all the time, so their clients are long-standing clients, and they can log in. So a lot of your details you can grab straight away off there. Other ones are open ones that maybe you do some text rounds to the people, or people have visited, and you can do a bit of a thing there saying, well, here's an app, maybe you might consider using us or something like that. And then there's also need another interface to be able to have each barber can actually look at what has actually been committed to and what is scheduled, so that they can actually do they can see what sort of work they're going to be doing. Is it dyeing, or is it hair cutting, or is it beards or whatever, and they can plan accordingly for those sorts of things. So one, they can actually see what their schedule is, and two, they would have a different interface. So in fact, they got an admin app such that if somebody's made a booking and then suddenly can't make it, they can cancel that and actually release that time back so other people can actually have it, and then maybe make a booking for them at another time. So at this point in time, this is just the basic app that anybody haven't bothered trying to put the logging in as a specific person to actually make something happen. So the other thing is that most of the work that I did on GlideApps was very early on, and the way that I was doing a lot of the GlideApps, instead of using the Glide components, I was actually using spreadsheet functions, and things like script editors and triggers to actually make those things work. There seems to be a different philosophy, and GlideApps are slowly building, and they've got this data panel through here that you can actually add specific columns to do actions. Now, I'm finding this a bit limited because of I can understand where they're going with the logic, is that they're trying to make sure these things are always happening, and that's one of the issues. There's a lot of glitches earlier on, is that the interface between the Glide app and Google Sheets, because you were doing some strange things in Google Sheets, things like iframes, they didn't actually come across into the Glide app very well. So they found different solutions, and they made them programmatically, and they come up with some fantastic stuff. So I'm actually having to relearn. So this is the app really based on an exercise, and I'm going to try and do it the Glide app way, because I want to learn and maybe think about putting this up as a template. So and when I looked at the template and what it was, basically they're saying use Google Sheets as a storage. So basically you take things and drop it into there, but basically but your functions and whatever you're doing, you try and keep within the Glide app framework. So what they're saying is we want this to be a Glide app type template, rather than lots of magic happening inside Google Sheets and within the app scripts and stuff, which is a shame, because I want to explore a couple of weird ones there. I want to link into their Firebase and play with some stuff there and do a bit of cross-linking. But they have got the Zapiers through here. Now, that was something that I found when I was actually looking at the app, is and let's just step through the app at this point in time. So I've got the thing where I've made a tab for I'm making one tab at the moment, but the idea is I'd make a tab for each barber. So some of them may work mornings, some may work afternoons, they might be working in a different place. There might be some overlap. They might work on the weekends, they might not work on the weekends, or maybe so you may want to hide them or open them or do a whole lot of different things, but you want a little bit of flexibility. But if we just come in and somebody says, well, actually, I want a bit of a haircut or something, I can look in on Wednesday and, oh, look, the only one that's available, 8 and the 8:30 are not available, so I choose the 9 one. At this point in time, I've got one which is a form, and unfortunately that form's not working through there. And why it's not working is a little thing that I put in all of these inside the feature show component when whom contains one. So there's a way of, and I'll explain why I've done that. So I'll actually just go to another day further on. We go to somewhere like Saturday, and we use the 8:30 one because the form should show up there. And here we got the form. So we got the client name. So Buffalo Bill, I most I spelled that wrong, and then phone, which is that, and then the service. Now they can select a service inside here, and what I've basically done with that is I've just done a concatenation on a sheet in my choices of, I've got the service, I've got the price, and I've got the time, and I'm just scrunching them together just so that when they pull down, they've got all of that information all at once. And really, I'm simplifying it. You could end up just having 3 or 4 pull downs to allow for better set there, but I'm just trying to speed up to understand the process. So, and then I've got this one here, which is a half an hour blocks, and then I've got some 1 hour blocks somewhere down here, the 44 one. So that's a 1 hour block. Now, I haven't found how I can actually solve that particular issue at this point in time. But anyway, they choose a thing, so they want to tape a haircut through there, and then they can actually make a note if there's another bit of suggestion that they want. Now at the front, we could actually take this, so depending on if they're logged in, these can be, may not actually need, all they need to do is actually just choose what they want and maybe some notes. So they tape a haircut and line, and I want Z strips or something, just to say there's something special that they want with their particular one. Now they can submit this form. So if we submit the form, what actually happens at this point in time, that form is actually submitted, but I still need to come through and push this switch, because if I push this switch, it now says this time isn't available. But if I click on this at this point in time, the form still comes up. So what I was doing in these ones here was I was suddenly saying, when that form's submitted, or when I do that switch, I'll change this so that inside these form items, in the features, oh, what's actually happened there? Inside the form, what I can actually do is that I can actually make a condition so that they're hidden when a certain event happens. So when that switch actually happens, you see at this point in time, I can actually go and add in, although it said it's not available, I can still add something in. So the notion is that, like, if this form was already done, the form disappears, so you cannot go in and access it. So it is a way of filtering it out so that somebody else can't come in and overwrite or double book a specific time, which is definitely what you don't want, because that would actually make everybody a bit unhappy about the whole thing. So that's the notion inside there. They can actually make a booking at this point in time. You know, I haven't got a way to suddenly saying, well, I'm actually got something, a service required that takes an hour, and I have got something that will automatically take the next part through here. When those forms are actually fired on through, what they actually do is that they go into this booking app through there. It takes the name. So other things. So that's what's actually, if we just come back into the form, that's what's being filled out, but we're also capturing the date, the time, whom, so which barber it's on, because again there's different tabs for different barbers, but we're actually sending all the data to one sheet at this point in time. And so we're just scraping a bit more extra information off, and we put all of that extra information off. So there's the information of Abby's the barber for here, it's on this particular day, it's at the 8 o'clock is what he's actually done, this is what he wants, it's a line-up, he's got a thebob, and he's just making a note of something that he's actually added. I've got the name and I've got the telephone number, and if I wanted, I could actually, if they're customers that I've already got data about, I can actually pull in extra data like their email or something and have it accessible straight away so that this can be done. Now, once I've got this booking up and running, later on in the Barber's admin app, we could get to the point where we can delete this, and we can also filter out by each particular barber. So that's a notion that we'll actually have through there. So that's what it's doing. It's just it's just basically allowing that and then turning it into not available. Now, when I did the reservation app, where I was doing a whole lot of app scripts, and I was doing a whole lot of formula and things like that, and I had several tables going all the way along. I was also using charts, but I was using tables in charts. So when I was coming through here and looking at components, and if I just go to chart, within the new one, the scopings within the GlideApp, they've only got a few charts. They've added this new one through here that I haven't played with on their videos. It didn't show up. So that's another new feature that's just come through. So maybe that may be one method of doing it. But the way that I've actually got the tables set up at the moment, this is just suddenly saying for all 8 o'clock appointments. So it's not reading across. It's actually just reading down on a particular column. So the way that I've got my data set up, maybe it's not the correct, possibly the best way to do it. Maybe I need to relink the data in another method, but it's just, let's see if I can get something working, test it out, and then put a whole load of different scenarios and then start doing it. At this point in time, I find this double thing a bit of a nuisance. One of the things is that using this, now this is one thing that I just find I'm using a lot of this column here is an if then else column. So that doesn't show up in the Google Sheets because it's not data that I'm putting in. So it doesn't need to be there. It's just saying if that happens, then do these things and go and change these other things off there. So if I go and copy that sheet across and then I come back into here, half of those tables are missing. So I've got to rebuild each time I've actually got something through here. So if I've got a shop where I actually have a whole load of changes of things, either I've got to have whoever's coming, like I may work only half day Friday, but somebody's actually there for the rest of the Friday, they've got to take over the identity of that, if they just take on that person's booking, so they can't have their own, or whether you build a whole lot of sheets. But it actually takes a long time to manually set all of the conditionalities that you need for all of these. So I find that's not easy to do. I actually found that the formulas in the Google Sheets, but what they're trying to do is make a more robust app. So there's a bit more tedium about it, but in some ways, because it's within the GlideApp environment, there isn't possibly any conflict between Google Sheets and the GlideApps. They're a lot more confident in what they're actually doing there. So in some ways, I'm finding this a little bit more limited, but in other ways, I think there's a robustness to it. Now, I'm still fumbling around, and there's an awful lot of videos on the insider rebuilds and stuff. I've got to watch that a few times, and the way that they're doing conditions and some other things. They started to do them in a different methodology. So their idea is just Google Sheets is the tabula rasa of which you just drop data in. So basically, I'm not doing any manipulation inside Google Sheets. I'm just trying to, that's the notion, is to bring all of the manipulation, all of the things that you want to do within the GlideApp environment. So it's more reliable from what they actually want to do. So yeah, in a sense, it's different from where I'm coming from. So I am struggling with this at this point in time. And because I've got less tools to play with, like the charts, I haven't got as many of those. I'm trying to do it. Now, also with another thing, as I'm actually building some of these ones up, I've got the picking of the points through here, and then I've got to come through here in the features and start doing some conditionality. So that can be quite bloody tedious doing it on a whole lot of things there. Within, if we just go upper level there, I can take my 8 across and bring it down, but I've got to go in and let's just say I've copied that one from above. I've got to change that to now the 10 o'clock one or whatever, and then I've got to rename this 10, and then I've got to go and do a whole lot. It ends up being quite tedious because you almost have to form each individual one. It's just the way that structure is at the moment. So maybe I've got the wrong structure for building this. I haven't quite thought it out in the new environment. I've sort of just said, that's how I did it in the past. That's the sort of logic that I'm thinking of. Just blast away and do that. And maybe that isn't the way to build. But the only way to find out is to actually go and do something, break it a lot, and then figure it out. So, and if you're in here, you can't copy this, you can't take this one here and make a copy of it. It doesn't let you, from what I can see. You can add a column, and that seems to be about your only choice through here. So in some ways, with the reservation app that I was actually doing before, is that I was manipulating within Google Sheets, and then I was pushing them into Google Calendar and keeping the Google Calendar for the database. Then I was pulling them out of Google Calendar, manipulating in Google Sheets, and then presenting in Glide. So I was actually using Glide interface really a lot of the times as a presentation interface. It seems here is that they're going into putting more functionality into the Glide. So this is one of the things I looked on the template. I'd seen it come out a while back, but I hadn't really followed it, and sort of was on to other topics and things that I was exploring. So and I went and looked at the template apps, and I'd like to see if I could get this refined to a point where it could be quite a useful template app, because I had a few. One of the biggest viewing ones that I have is the reservation app, so that whole booking app seems to be in a little bit of a demand in a way. So I'd like, and I did have a gentleman barber who was trying to build an app, and he was getting frustrated with what I was doing. And so I thought, well, how can you make this more simple? Now, one of the things that I'm going to see that's going to hit me in the face quite, how do I get rid of a row and go and move it somewhere else so that the current day, today is always the first row on the list? And then how do I add a row at the end? At this point in time, I'm just playing with a bit of data in the first few, and only on a short period. I think I'm only going to 9 a.m. and just seeing how these buttons are all working through there. So once I've got the logic, then I can do the repetition of just building extra rows. And then I've got to do the repetition of building for another 2 or 3 different people through there. So, maybe you don't do it by person, you actually do it by seat. So there's a seat 1, seat 2, seat 3. So whoever the person is, maybe you actually suddenly saying, well, want that seat, I want that. And maybe there's a choice of barbers that you can actually have through different periods of time, although that could get complex if you've got a split time, like you need an hour and the barber has chosen him for half an hour somewhere else. So that's getting a little bit sophisticated. I just wanted a simple, how do I do a booking app? Now, when I was doing the reservation app, one of the things there was the interface. There was the staff would take the bookings, they would actually do all the manipulation and put that data in, so that app was actually being controlled by the staff in the restaurant. So that was the idea of this one. This one I actually want to put a layout so that it's actually the people out and about can actually use it and actually make their own app. And if they see that they can't get that particular time, they can look in the other barbers ones to see if there's a different time for theirs. So they can choose a different barber if they want, or else they can go for a later time or a later date with the barber that they actually choose for. So it's being able to give them the choice that they don't actually have to do the ringing up and stuff. They can actually just make the bookings and things, even to the point of maybe doing a pay. So I do want to try and get this logic through here and make something happen. Now the other thing with the reservation app, because I was pushing into Google Calendars, I was using the manipulations in Sheets and then I was pushing it into Calendars. One thing which I didn't actually have in that app was a delete button. Let's say, I was actually just in the dentist, and there was somebody who was coming in and cancelling a booking for one of their children because they had the flu, and in this time of COVID and things, we'll move it further out. I just don't want that to actually happen. And so I was suddenly thinking, well, actually, I haven't got that in the app through the thinking process. So my app was quite simplistic at the time. So I need to allow for some method for the people who've got the admin to be able to go through and turn a switch off so that it makes something available again. So if they turn that switch off, that becomes available, but then they've also got to go into the bookings and blow away that particular booking wherever it was. And so it becomes available again and it can be written over. So that's another item. So making it an external app, so it gives other people a lot more flexibility, but at the same time gives the people who are administering it a good lot of information. And it just means that a lot of the stuff is processed before. The other thing with that is, again, you're spending less time on the phone trying to organise an actual time for those people. They just organise the time. They just tell you what they want. You know what they want. And if you actually suddenly think, I need a little bit more information, you can always ring them up or text them and actually just say, you wanted the bubblegum pink dye, this grade or that grade, or how pink do you really want it? So they can do the clarifications, but it just means that whole booking and a lot of the things today are very much, book online and do all of those things. But within that, I actually wanted people, and one thing that annoys me on booking things is you don't have a place to make a comment. So to me, that's quite an important aspect of being able to suddenly saying, well, that's the general, but this is the specific. I want something over and above. Or you can say, oh, well, that hairdresser knows a bit more about me. So the other thing that you can actually have is that you can actually have client preferences. If you offer them drinks or something like that, that somebody likes coffee with 2 sugars and somebody or something like that. So you can start being a bit more. So you can actually have that information sitting in the background further along if you've got a customer list down here. So this is another thing that I wanted to do. So there's sort of information that's kind of quite knowing, which will kind of hopefully make your clients more loyal to you because you offer an extra added value for your service. So, if they're coming at a certain time and certain ones are always in a hurry or something like that, so they just want to be in and out pretty quick, you can actually have things ready and set up for them so that you give them the service that they want. So you're tailoring and you can start refining your service to those to give them what they need. So interesting. It's sort of trying to get those layers to actually work. So this one, I'm trying to do a lot of things, and I'm not doing them very well at all at the moment. My switches and the things and the double interface. It'd be better to actually have this switch inside the app, inside the form at this point. So you've done the switch, but I haven't been able to find out how to do that. Because this is going to another table. And what I'm trying to find is I'm having to use this as a trigger for altering this. So this is just, I'm not seeing how I can reach across and get a trigger through there to come back to make something happen here. So maybe I've got to start exploring, and that's one thing that I'm actually quite excited about, and I've got to find a use for, is unique row IDs or GUIDs for those sorts of things. So maybe that's the thing that I use here. If I actually have a GUID, then I can actually do it, that maybe I don't need to switch through there, that can be reading somewhere else. But at the moment, what I've actually found is this is only working on this. It's only working on this table here. So it's not that good. So I've got to think of maybe an alternative way of doing it. So in some ways, I think the way that they've done it, again, this particular app that they've done, it's a very beautiful looking app. And in some ways there's a sort of less is more, the less that you've got, that you've got to work with it and do a bit more. So I'm still stumbling quite a lot on some of the issues that I've got, but that's the sort of the stuff that maybe this has to go through a couple of iterations. The thing is, though, what happens is I finally find a solution, go off onto something else and completely forget about it, and somebody else gets bogged down in exactly the same issue. So the thing is, it's actually worth doing the videos on I couldn't get it to work, which is just as relevant as the ones which say this is how you make it work, because somebody may be doing something similar to you but slightly different. And if they can see what things don't work that you've already come across, then they know not to go or not to use that sort of the process or thing as it is. So I hope that's been of interest to you. This app will, it's taken me a while to get here, and I've explored a few things, and I am struggling. And I think I'm going to have to blow it away and start again and redo and rebuild 2 or 3 times until I start getting something, whereas I feel I've got a little bit more control onto how things happen. Then I'm quite happy to actually go through and do a lot of repetition for a lot of hours and things like that. But you've got to have a fundamental robustness in the logic of how it works, and this particular one is not really working for me at this point in time. But saying that, it does work. You can actually use it to do something. You can get somebody to make a booking. So as such, it is functional. Not pretty, but it's functional. So maybe the thing is that I build this and I make this one happen, and then it's something that's there, but it's only gone so far. But something that's happened, you still have to manually come and delete rows and do things. And maybe it's worth just carrying on and persevering with this, because then I can make this app and put the data in, and then I can look at the presentation, because and how do the admin people interface with that, and then maybe I should do the one where I've actually got the password coming in as well. So once I've got those, I'm starting to scope and get a feel for how all of the different things need to happen, because I may need different data to them than the data that I've actually got at the moment. Yes, rather pathetic at this point in time, but it needs a rethink. But that's the journey so far, and you can actually have a map app, or it's got all of these, and I always think these are very, very wonderful what they've actually got for all the linkages and the stuff. And I'm actually thinking of maybe having a list here of the barbers, so you sort of drill in here and you get onto these particular sheets. So you're trying to have a minimalist. They don't have to jump through a whole lot of tabs. The front interface actually gives you all of the things you want, so that on the next page we actually have a bit about this particular hairdresser, some contact things if they wanted to contact that person specifically, or text or something. And but that's a sort of a front-end refinement. It's more, I want to get the function working. I want to be able to have something that sort of makes sense. The other thing is here, you see, 8:30, 9:30, so I'm about 10:30. So if I've got a morning and an afternoon, I've got to do an awful lot of scrolling. And then do I start filtering out the day, as it goes through the hours? Do I get them to depress? So this is one of the issues that I've got. Although I've made that not available, or in fact, if I just go to somewhere here where it's turned invisible, I've still got this form tab. I can't seem to get rid of it. I can't hide it. So that's just another aspect of that particular thing, that if I'm here, I can't show components, and then I've got the showing the form, and then maybe I've got to have a time or something on a date, so that whenever these are passed, we actually just make a visibility, and we just hide when it's after that time, or just hide them completely. And that's maybe another one, is when that switch happened, we just make the whole thing disappear, so it's visible when that is, or something. So my conditionality, I've got to start exploring these to get a bit more with the conditionality through there. But it's I'm starting to get the feel for what needs to happen. I'm starting to see the limitations of the tools of how, and now I've actually got to get familiar enough with them to see how I can actually turn them into the way that I want. So it's slowly here, and just working through this interface. There's some really cool things in here, but and the next one, once I've actually got something that's semi-workable, I think I'll then step through each of the things and just how I filtered it down. Because if I put the app into the App Store, I'll actually make a video on how I built the app. So if somebody actually gets a template, they can actually go through and change things in a logical manner. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Put a thumbs up and think about subscribing, and even think about being on my Patreon, being a patron. If not, up and